Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
Hello and welcome to the Women Today podcast. And on Monday's programme, we've been speaking to the President of the National Union of Teachers, who's on the island for a few days, having a look around some of the schools here and finding out more about our education system and SWIFT. And during the programme, you were hugely positive about what you've seen so far in the education system here.
Yes, absolutely. I've been very impressed with what I've seen and the way that the schools work to give the children a really good deal. And it was great to meet with such dedicated and committed staff and very welcoming schools. It's been a lovely visit. I've very much enjoyed it.
Jess Egelnick is the local secretary of the NUT, and you managed to sit on the sofa for the whole of the programme, but we've dragged you in here for the podcast, Jess. How important is it having this NUT presence on the island, would you say?
It's very important. It gives teachers a source of support for things that happen, whether it's with respect to absences and illness of their own, any issues that come up with parents and children, as well as their employment contracts and rights, and the peer support of having that connection to other teachers who can provide advice and recommendations and just that general support, but in a professional forum.
And Jess, in the programme, Anne was so complimentary about the education system over here, certainly compared to what teachers have to deal with over in the UK. Would you ever consider a career over there?
No.
It really is a better position to be in.
Everything
here.
I've heard indicates that it's so much better here. And when I talk to other teachers, when I go to union events in the UK, they can't believe the positive things that I'm telling them that either we don't have to do here or that we have the freedom to do here, and the way the whole system runs just seems much better here.
And the important thing about that, presumably as well, is if the teachers are happier, that is then having an absolute knock-on effect on the children and their future, isn't it?
Absolutely, because we have energy to focus on that and on the teaching and on the children.
And I think that's what I saw in the schools, that the teachers were able to put their energy and their creativity into the activities that they were doing with the children, and they were really able to think about what do we want the children to learn from what we're going to present them with, and all their energy was into that, plus some excellent ways of recording children's achievements that I think any parent would be so pleased to see what their child had been doing in school, whereas in the UK, to tell a parent, your child has just reached this number and it's below expectations, that's a hard thing for parents to hear, and it's a hard thing for teachers to say. And I didn't get any impression here in the island that would be a conversation parents and teachers would have. It will be a much more positive experience for everybody.
Now, we did touch on the issue of mental health among young people during Monday's programme, and that was all to do with a survey that's been carried out by the Prince's Trust, and it looked at various issues, and confidence was one of those. We didn't really get to talk much about the social media side of things, which is so prevalent now, very different to when you started out in teaching in the 1970s. Social media then, good or bad? What's your view?
I suppose as a head teacher, I saw a lot of the downside of that, both with children getting involved with online bullying, parents making comments feeling that they were completely uncensored comments that they could make, which the conversations that in the past would have happened at the school gate are now happening online.
Is this about teachers?
So about teachers, very personal comments about teachers. I got a threat of being beaten up by a parent online, and that does make you a bit nervous and a bit worried about the community you're serving if there are people who feel that there's no filter. They can say what they like and there will be no consequences to that either. And we see that happening with youngsters, with children. The online bullying and cyberbullying can be soul-destroying and very, very harmful to young people who can be vulnerable. And then they're made fun of, comments are made about the way they look, the way they speak, what they're interested in, and that can be extraordinarily harmful to them, and goes back to some of the things you were saying in the programme about mental health issues, that children feel less confident, more anxious, and not surprising if they're reading when they go home at night some comments about them on social media. And the other thing I've experienced is that in the past where children might fall out in school and they fall out with their best friend and the world's come to an end. If your best friend doesn't like you anymore, that is a big deal when you're 8 and 9. But it would happen at school. You go home, talk to your mum or your dad or, other family members, come back the next day and it would be pretty much forgotten. Now that goes on longer. There'll be texting or comments on social media, and that kind of interaction can go on for much longer and is much harder for children to cope with, and sometimes because they don't air it with anybody. They don't talk to any adult about it, and that can be hard for kids to cope with.
Jess, online safety is something that's taken very seriously in schools on the island. And speaking as a parent myself, I find that the balance between letting my boys have access to things online because I know their peers do, and really worrying about what they are seeing, even though you can put all the filters and protection in place. I find it a really hard balance to strike. Is there a general policy, I suppose a question to both of you actually, Jess and Anne, is there a general policy that you think parents should follow?
I think one of the biggest things is to be able to have an open dialogue with your child, because the cases where we find that the children are aware of something happening but it's dealt with effectively are the cases when the child feels comfortable reporting to their parent what somebody else has said, what somebody else has shown them, what they've seen, without fear of repercussions, without fear of losing privileges. And in those cases, those children don't seem to have the problems. But where you get children who are completely uncensored, parents aren't interested in what they're doing, parents don't talk to them about it, or where the children feel that they can't speak about it because they'll lose the privilege of the device, then that's where the problems come up. And as long as there's that open dialogue and the children know, parents will be checking, or the phones are mirrored in some cases, parents are going to know what's going on, so I'm going to behave accordingly, and it's okay for me to tell them that somebody has done something, then that doesn't seem to have any negative fallout.
I think one of the difficulties is that some parents use the technology as a kind of babysitter and to entertain their children without really knowing what it is that they're looking at. And even though you can have filters and block certain sites, there are other ways that things come up, and we do know that some sites are specifically targeted at children that are not suitable, and they use names like Disney character names to lure children in, and they're not suitable content at all. So there's no substitute really for parents monitoring what their children are up to and not having devices in bedrooms. It's really better to have it in the living room or the dining room or somewhere where you can glance at what's going on the screen. And as Jess says, that kind of trust for children that that they should always say if there's something they're seeing or speaking, somebody's talking to them that they feel uncomfortable with, and that they should talk about it and check it out. And there is a big job for schools to do in making sure that children are cyber savvy, I suppose, so that they know that actually what I'm seeing or what I'm reading isn't really what I should be seeing and reading. But it's hard for parents and it's hard for kids. And so we need to keep it top of the agenda and in the forefront of people's minds.
It's going to be difficult though, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, it's this sort of lead by example element, isn't it? Because actually parents spend all the time on Facebook as well, and they're always on their phone checking what's going on online media. Not directly, maybe out of the corner of my eye, but if they're seeing their parents do that too, how can they then say, well, it's wrong? Yeah,
we'd be hypocritical, wouldn't we, if we said you should never go on devices or anything, because that's not the modern way. We all use our phones and our laptops and so on to find information and to entertain ourselves, and so on, and interacting with other people. But there has to be a balance between interacting with real people that are actually there in the room with you and being all the time on some kind of device. And I do think there is some evidence that particularly for young children when they're developing language, if there's nobody actually talking to them, then that's harmful to their language development as well. And it's sad to see parents on their phone, baby in the pram, nobody interacting or talking with them. And perhaps we need to bring more focus to bear on that actually we do need to talk to one another in the flesh.
It's a very difficult situation for parents as well, because with technology having advanced so quickly, you can no longer model your policies on what your parents did or what that previous generation did, and everybody's making it up as they go, because it's advancing so quickly that even what worked 3 years ago with your first child isn't going to work with your second child, because the technology is different, the access is different, and expectations are different. So it's a very difficult situation for everyone to keep up with.
Let's just close the podcast with looking at an issue that we kind of touched on it towards the end of the programme, Anne, and that was the idea of this X Factor generation, the children who believe they can have everything, they can be anything they want.
It promotes a wrong image and a wrong impression to young people that, just by saying, I want to be famous. And often when you see people being interviewed on the X Factor, they say, well, what's your dream? And it's kind of put out as if... if I go on TV and I make a record, or however they do it technologically these days, that you'll be satisfied human being, and the world will be your oyster. And it kind of gives the impression that all that can be achieved with very little effort on your part. You just have to want it hard enough, without actually you have to work at it hard enough to really be successful.
Well, we were talking about this before we came on air, and Jess, you were saying as well, it's not just sort of X Factor, it's also this idea of YouTubers and vloggers and things, in that actually you can become famous really quickly, but it's obviously that's not a career choice, is it?
No, well, the children see it genuinely as a career choice that's going to make them money. And when you look at what children are reading, they're reading books that are written by vloggers who are still in their teens or early 20s, and it is strangely more of a viable career opportunity than it seems to to people who've gone through a more traditional path. But those are also one-off situations. There's still that element that not everybody is going to get to that point. Not everybody is going to have those followers. And as Anne's saying, it doesn't mean that you're going to have the satisfaction of doing something meaningful, which is one of the things that, according to that video we were discussing, that millennials want, is they're in search of meaning and purpose. But that doesn't come from having a meaningless vlog and a few people following you either.
And also it's encouraging what we were talking about earlier, Anne, when you're saying, Facebook in itself and all the social media sites are encouraging negativity. If you're a vlogger, you're very much encouraging potential negative backlash from people and people critiquing you and sort of saying nasty things and trolling you, aren't you? So again, it's sort of fueling that whole environment.
Yeah, I suppose we're in a situation where we've got to develop our pathway through these things, and we're still in what I would call a fuzzy situation where it's not clear whether these developments could be a force for good or a force for bad. I'm trying to think, perhaps when the printed word was first invented, did people think, oh, this gives people a green light to write whatever they like about other people? And perhaps some of our fears were fears that they had, and proved not to be as terrible as we thought at the time. So I think we have to find our way through these things. But certainly the idea that you could, anybody can sit in their room or anywhere they like and put out something, and everybody will follow them and think they're wonderful, and what happens when actually they don't. And one of the things I've seen in the island schools is this idea of building resilience, and perhaps children really do need quite a lot of resilience in the modern world to know what's important and what's valuable and what's worthwhile, and brush off some of the other stuff that could be harmful.
NUT President Anne Swift, it's been fascinating having you with us this afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Jess, there was a sort of a running theme throughout the programme about Anne's hatred of bananas. I just want to check how you feel about this yellow fruit.
I'm a fan of the real banana, but not as much a fan of the fake banana as in a banana milkshake.
Right. Okay. You aren't a fan of this bottle flipping trend,
Absolutely
which I
not.
have to say is the bane of my life at the moment. What is this all about?
I couldn't tell you. It's one of those internet challenges that then takes over the classroom, and endless bottle flipping behind your back all the time.
I think these things come and go. I mean, when not so long ago, it was these discs that children collected. I can't remember the name of them now, but then they used to collect them, and they could be flipped and played with, and they were all. And then it's like collecting football cards.
What were those little bands called?
Oh,
Loom
yes,
bands.
the loom bands.
Loom bands, yeah.
These things come and go. And,
I've still got a load of those in my Hoover.
Yeah.
Where they belong, I think, by the sound of things.
The bottle flipping challenge could be used as a good science.
If only we had a
experiment,
couple with us now.
Yeah. We could try it out and see what's the optimum amount of liquid to be in the bottle to get the best results. And
yeah, there you go. Turn it back to science. I love it.
The different kind of plastics, the size.
Lid off, lid on.
Lid on.
I'm going to have to stop you there, Anne.
Okay.
Okay, she's still going. Anne Swift and Jess Egelnick have joined us for the Women Today podcast. Thank you very much for downloading it. You can find out more information and follow our blog at manxradio.com.
Women Today, brought to you by citywing.com for your next flight away.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com. Love being Shaw. Terms and conditions apply.